Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for day 2 of our civic education series. Today we will talk about state government. And this afternoon we have Miss Candice Grause here to share more about state government and answer any questions you all may have for her. So without further ado, I'm not going to take any time. I'm just going to go right into it and introduce you all to Mrs. Candice Grause.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. As Charlie said, I am Candice Grause. I'm Chief of Staff here at Tallahassee Community College. I work directly for the president here in the president's office. And part of my role is, I work a little bit with our local representatives and trying to communicate the priorities of Tallahassee Community College and hopefully secure some funding for us so that we can expand our programs and all sorts of other good stuff. So I have a little bit of background in state government, and I'm going to go ahead and go through just real briefly kind of the structure of state government here in Florida, which is a special state, our beautiful Sunshine State, often in the news. But beyond that, I'm not going to talk too much because I do want to hear questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have. So with that being said, I know that yesterday and day 1 of the civic education series, we heard from the local level. At the state level, it's a little bit different. It more closely resembles in its structure the federal system. So there's 3 branches. There's the executive branch, which is headed by the governor, the supreme executive power of the state, which is vested to him according to the Constitution. The executive branch is, of course, responsible for faithfully executing laws. There's also a lieutenant governor and then a cabinet, which is elected. There's an attorney general, chief financial officer, a CFO, and the commissioner of agriculture. So these 4 individuals, including the governor, are elected to 4-year terms. I should say 5 individuals. They're all elected to 4-year terms. In addition to the executive branch, there's the judicial branch, which of course is the courts. They interpret the law, apply the Constitution, and in the state of Florida, there are a series of circuit and county courts. There's also the district courts of appeals, and then finally the state Supreme Court. So, kind of structurally speaking, the county courts preside over local criminal trials for misdemeanors and some civil cases. The circuit courts are at the top of that trial system, and they do hear some limited appeals from the counties. And then the district court of appeals are the intermediate appellate courts that receive most of the appeals from trial courts. And then finally, there's the Supreme Court, which is, of course, the highest level. That's actually headquartered right next door to our downtown location, the TCC Center for Innovation. Center for Innovation is right next door to the state capitol, right next door to the Supreme Court, right next door to City Hall. So right there in one block are a bunch of different government entities at all levels. So the Supreme Court also is composed of 7 justices, and 5 must participate in every case. So beyond those 2 branches is the legislative branch. This is the one that I spend most time on. It's a bicameral branch, meaning that there's 2 houses. So there's the Florida Senate and the Florida House. This is, again, very similar to what we have at the federal level. The Senate is composed of 40 members. Each are elected from a single member district across the state for a 4-year term. And the head of the state Senate is the president, and that's currently Bill Galvano. In the House, there's actually 120 members. Each of these serve 2-year terms, and they are limited to 4 terms. And they are led by a Speaker of the House, which is currently Jose Oliva. So the only constitutional requirement for the legislative branch is that they pass a state budget. They can, of course, also introduce like other bills policy bills, sorts of things, budget line items, whatever it may be. But their only requirement is a state budget. The legislature meets every year for 60 consecutive days. And depending, it's kind of a weird system constitutionally, but the regular session convenes the first, I'm not going to get this right, Tuesday after the first Monday in March or something like that. And then on an odd number year, it's actually January that it starts. So depending on the year, we kind of have a short turnaround. And then in between that, they actually do conduct what's called committee meetings. So, this year, as it's an election year, the election will happen in November. And then within a week or two, we anticipate that committee assignments will come out. So, higher ed appropriations, I should say, is a big one for us. The larger appropriations committee, there's an education committee in the Senate, all sorts of different committees that hear various bills that come up from the various representatives and senators. And they hear those bills and move them along based on public hearing and data that they've collected to make sure that it's feasible. I think last year it was a record-breaking year, and they had over 3,400 bills filed, and a very small proportion of those are actually voted in. So the chances of your bill getting through in 60 days or less is pretty slim. In addition to the regular sessions, there are special sessions, and these can be called by either the governor, or if the Senate president and the House speaker issue a joint proclamation. So that being said, the legislature is a citizen legislature. This is different than, say the executive or judicial branches, which that's their full-time job. Legislators, this is not their full-time work. Usually they have a day job. And these can range from real estate brokers to farmers and everything in between. So it's a diverse group, and I think rightfully so. And they have a lot of different personalities that come together. But one thing of note, one thing that's kind of unique about Florida, and this touches on all branches, is that Florida, of course, we're the Sunshine State. We also have what's called the Sunshine Law. And this was enacted, I think, way back in the 60s. And TCC being a state entity, we're not an agency, but we are publicly funded. We fall under the Sunshine Law in that all of our records are public records. So every email that I send, every board presentation that we give, every meeting notes that we take, these are all public records and accessible to the public at any time. Not just papers or books, but photographs, recordings, that this is a public record because it's being recorded, all of those things. It's actually, in many ways it can be onerous on those who are doing this work, but at the same time it provides an unprecedented level of access that just didn't exist before that. A lot of government work in the early days of our country was done not so transparently. So it provides a lot of access, to all of our citizens, including students like you all, to be able to take a peek at what's going on in our government and make sure that your elected representatives are doing what you want them to do. So yeah, I don't want to talk too much, Charlie. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take those.
All right. Well, there's a question. So we understand that you're the chief of staff for the president at Tallahassee Community College. So what does a day-to-day look like for you in your role?
Well, if anybody watched Thomas's presentation yesterday, he's the chief of staff to the mayor, and my answer is very similar in that my job is to execute the mission of the college and the vision of the president. So, He has projects that he enacts, initiatives that he puts into place. I coordinate, I project manage, I get it to the finish line and work with those who are actually doing that sort of work. So, I will work with our provost and executive vice president on matters of academic importance. She's our chief academic officer. I work with our chief business officer, on various issues from the workday implementation to HR issues. Whatever ends up needing to be done, I'm usually the person that's helping get it there. And that means that there is no normal day, just like Thomas said yesterday. There's no normal day, which is part of the fun of what I do, because you never will get bored. Especially working for our president, who is just a fantastic leader that knows how to keep this institution moving forward. There's always something, there's always more work to do. And it's usually really exciting and fun work, especially since we get to work with students. That's our mission. So really rewarding and really fun. Can be tiring. That's why we have days off, and that's why we have personal lives, and we need to keep that in perspective with any career. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it.
So next question is, what would you say is the hardest part of your job, and what's the best part in your point of view?
Oh man, best part, like I said, is definitely working with students. Whenever I get the opportunity to, sit down with students and talk with them about their stories and help them along their journey, because usually they come here thinking, this is a make it point. I made it here. No, you're just beginning, and it's so exciting to see them grow into that process and move on and do really amazing things, and to be some small part of that is incredibly rewarding. The hardest part is just your day-to-day operational issues that end up cropping up. We are in the business of people. We spend the majority of our budget on payroll, and we also serve students who are people. So making sure that you maintain the various benefits and incentives for our faculty and staff, to make sure that they're happy and healthy and have everything that they need to serve our groups, our students, our community. It's always very hard when someone parts ways with the college because they found something that they want to do in their career or whatnot. I don't like goodbyes, which doesn't help on graduation weekend, because you have to say goodbye to everybody. But it's part of the job. And we just roll with it and enjoy the time that we do get to spend together.
Thank you. So getting back to state government, could you tell us how state government works together with local government and the federal government?
Good question. So anybody that remembers their high school civics classes, or maybe even TCC classes, depending on how good their high school civics classes were or how much they paid attention, knows that we are a federalist system. So the federal Constitution, if it does not specifically reserve a right to the federal government, everything else falls to the people, to the states. So you've got your big items go to the federal government, defense and infrastructure and that sort of stuff. And even then, infrastructure in some cases falls to the states. It used to be, that there was a very weak federal system way back when the country was first founded. It has trended towards a stronger federal system. But actually what we're seeing now is, again, the power is kind of sliding back to the states, where each state, you'll see that, you've seen this probably during COVID, is the governors and even the local jurisdictions have largely been in control of the different mandates and protocols that they've put in place in their local areas. So federal government reserves the right. If not, it goes to the states, and the state then delegates powers to the local municipalities, the local level. So here in the city of Tallahassee, Tallahassee is responsible for, there's a housing authority, which is public housing, affordable housing, police work, firefighters, making sure the street lights stay on, utilities, those sorts of things. Those are not handled at either the federal or state level. It just depends on, kind of the area as to where it falls. But by and large, the states right now are definitely top of the food chain, and a lot of activity happening at that level, a lot of attention on the governors right now. But I will say, that being said, that, if you want to get involved, I would always recommend first and foremost at the local level. That's where politics, politics starts and ends, is at the local level. I don't know if that answered the question, Charlie. If anybody has a follow-up question, feel free to ask it.
So that was the follow-up question. You kind of answered it. If one is interested in getting involved or participating in state government, how would they go by doing that?
So there's a number of different ways. Part of my job is to communicate with our local representatives, and as students or just regular citizens, everybody can do that as well. You can just schedule a meeting with them. You can attend public meetings. I mentioned earlier, things like committee weeks and session. They have a lot of open forums during that time where the public can come and speak on any certain topic that they want. You can join an organization or a cause. There's a lot of demonstrations and special days devoted to different causes that folks can get involved with, and that's always a great way. And of course, vote. Voting is, the number one way, the number one right that we have as citizens to be engaged and involved with our government, and that happens at every single level, every single branch. There's a lot of different initiatives and candidates on this, I guess it's 2 weeks from now. I was going to say this year's, but it's 2 weeks from now. Our ballots are chock full of folks that are up for election, including the president. And yeah, like I said, contacting directly. If you have a local representative that you want to talk to, they are at our service. So you should definitely by all means reach out and express, some questions, concerns, whatever you have.
Thank you. You mentioned the ballot, so that brings up a good point. We have 6 amendments on there. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think all of them. Yep, all of them are catered to the state of Florida.
Yes. Yeah, those are amendments to the state constitution. We unfortunately do not get to vote on a federal constitution level the same way, I should say.
So do you have any resources where students can do their research on these amendments, not just go in and abracadabra, just yes, no, no, yes. Yeah. There you go, blindfold. Just do their research on these amendments and make sure they're understanding what these amendments are. If they vote yes or if they vote no.
Yeah, I have. I will admit that I've gone to the ballot before and not done full research. I had, very specific vote that I wanted to make, and then I'd notice while I was in there, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that was on my ballot as well. And in which case I did not feel comfortable voting either way. I left it blank for the time being. I have since learned my lesson and do my research before I go in to vote on election day. And this year I'm going to go a little bit early even. But the constitutional amendments, there's a lot of write-ups online about those. The pitfall, of course, is that they put these little paragraphs in the ballot, and you can read those, but they're never they're never the full picture. It would be impossible to provide the full picture. So with any policy issues, you always want to look at both sides, or if there's even more than two sides, read the pros, the cons, who's against it, who's for it, why does it matter, what's the potential impact, all those sorts of things. They were in the business for a while of combining these constitutional amendments, and they've since backed away from that. I think our last election, they had so many different amendments on the ballot that they actually combined a bunch of them, which was unfortunate because maybe you would agree with one but not the other. Anyway, so those I recommend doing a little bit of legwork. It only takes a few minutes just to read through some articles and understand all sides of those. Beyond that, the candidates, so I think at the state level, we have a state senate here locally, a state senate race between Loran Osley and Marva Preston. And Loran Osley actually had served in the House of Representatives until this past year. So she's now running for state senate. So definitely a lot of experience in the state legislature. And Marva Preston certainly has a lot of qualifications as well. It just depends on what you consider to be merits, and doing your research there. And for that case, I would say, there's a bunch of resources. There's Ballotpedia, there's their campaign websites. The internet is your best friend in this case. I mean, it used to be we didn't have that. We would get these little books and you would have to page through them, and you didn't know who wrote them necessarily, and never the full picture. But now we have a lot of access, and it's thanks to things like the Sunshine Law that a lot of this stuff is available.
Thank you for that one. Do we have any more questions in the chat? Let's see. Not yet. So I have a question just to bring some clarity or understanding to certain officials. So could you explain what a state representative is? Because you have a couple of state representatives on a ballot, and students might not know who this person is or know what their role will be if they're elected.
Yeah, thank you. So the state representative serves in the House of Representatives, as opposed to a senator, which serves in the Senate. And the Senate only has 40 members, but the House has 140. So similar to at the federal level, they're based on districting. So obviously the larger the population, the more representatives you have, as opposed to the Senate, which is based more geographically, I'll say. And those lines for both houses are redrawn and reproportioned every time we do a census, just to see where the population is. But by and large, that's why we only have the one Senate seat here in our district, but we have, I think, three representatives, depending on where you're at in our service district. So the House of Representatives really is more of a populous house as opposed to the Senate, if that makes any sense.
Thank you.
Is that all we got?
Yeah.
Did we knock it out?
You all don't be shy. You have Candice at your disposal. So you ask away. So I guess they're shy.
That's all right. I must have answered all of the questions really, really well. Well, I will say this, going off of opportunities for engagement, if, a lot of folks are intimidated by reaching out to your local representative or senator. One of the things that we like to do, or I like to do, is we take, we have the SGA group go around and meet with them just to introduce and put faces to names. And every opportunity that I get to take a student downtown, which, who knows with COVID right now if we're going to be able to visit them, But, putting faces to names and being able to shake hands and say hi is really important. And they enjoy that. They really do. That's why they got into the business. But there are etiquettes, there are protocols. Before you reach out to meet with someone, you really want to know your subject matter. So if you're asking a question, know why you're asking it and what it means. You want to know their full name and how to pronounce it. There's lots of resources online, or you can ask someone like me who can help you with that, and understand their position. So if you wanted to, Senator Monfort is terming out this year. Senator Monfort was wonderful with education. He was particularly interested in education and very supportive of our system. And so we knew that we could go to him with issues related to colleges or even K through 12. You want to be brief. You'll probably only get about 15 minutes. If you send something along, you don't want to use form letters. Write something from your own words, from the heart. If you are representing others, like say you were a member of the SGA or any other student group or an organization, you would want to disclose that. You would want to say, I'm here on behalf of whoever. If you have supporting documentation, that's always good to bring with you. If there's a specific bill that you're there to talk about, then you would want that number. And of course, always, 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 be courteous, be on time, be professional, and, respectful. So yeah, that's my top tips.
Thank you for those tips. So, I guess a little unknown fact about Candice. She started out as a student here at Tallahassee Community College. So with that being said, the question is, what is something you wish you would have done different to get to where you are today?
Ooh, wow, that's a good question. I, of course, wish I would have gotten here faster and I would have more time to spend doing what I love. But I am, of course, I'm under no illusion that I'm I'm not going to go on from here and do other things. Um, Gosh, that's a tough question. Differently, I can't think of much. And the reason for that is of course, of course, there's a lot of cringy moments that I look back on where I was growing and learning as a human, both when I was just a kid and even into my 20s, where I'm like, gosh darn it, I wish I would have been smarter about that. But I wouldn't have learned those lessons, and who knows who I would have become, or if I'd even be where I am today, um, if I hadn't made those choices. So yeah, I don't think that I would do anything differently. Everybody's path is different, and how you get there is completely your choice, and the different steps you take are yours. Only you can take them. So if you have a goal in mind, to whoever asked that question, and you want to get there quickly, I would say work hard. Um, Say yes to what you can. Be choosy about your time though, and yeah, just keep moving forward. Don't stop.
Thank you. So I guess as we wrap up, I have maybe one or two more questions. So if a student was interested in, let's say, shadowing a Miss Chief of Staff for the president at Tallahassee Community College, would that be an opportunity that would be available to them?
Oh, of course, yeah. I usually have at least one intern a year, sometimes more. It's just this year was kind of not so great year with COVID and everything else. But my intention is to continue my legislative intern program, which I usually have for someone who's interested in getting involved. And last year it was actually the SGA Senate legislative senator, I think. And so, yeah, I want to continue that. But overall, I think I mentioned it earlier, there's always work to be done. And I believe that the work that we do is very meaningful and could be quite um, meaningful for a student to engage in. And I always welcome the opportunity to also have a student in my office and working with me to keep our focus on them and help us stay on track. So yes, I do recommend that they reach out to me. Whoever's interested, I'm happy to sit down or Zoom with anyone and discuss their goals. And we can go from there. There's also the Career Center, which has kind of coordinates our internships for the college. There's work study opportunities. There's a whole bunch. Just reach out to one of us, and we'll connect you to the right folks, me included.
Thank you so much. Well, I guess the room has gotten quiet in there, either shower question out, but I want to thank you, Candice, for taking your time out this afternoon just to share information about state government, as well as some information about Tallahassee Community College and how we function under the state government and with our funding and so forth. Excuse me. And so thank you once again. If you all students have any questions, she is on campus, so you have access to her. Shoot her an email. You can put in my TCC in the discussion. I'm trying to reach Candice. She may reply. If she doesn't reply, somebody from the campus will shoot her information to you all. So you have a great resource amongst you here in Tallahassee Community College. So I tell students all the time, reach out to these resources, not to say use them, but they're here for your support. They're here to see you succeed and reach your end goal, whatever your end goal may be. So don't just look at them as an individual who you can't talk, feel, or reach out to. They're here for you. We're here to serve the students. Like Kenna said, this is the job that she loves to do every day, and she does it for the students. So that right there is an open door opportunity for you all to reach out to her if you have any questions or just want to sit down and Zoom or shoot her a text or email. So make sure you reach out to her if you're interested in just sitting with her, learning more about her and her role as chief of staff, or just having another individual, another employee at Tallahassee Community College to reach out to and have set goals, your short and long-term goals with. So Candice, thank you again for this afternoon and sharing this information.
Thank you, Charlie.
Students, make sure you get out there and vote. This is day 2 of early voting. We can't stress it enough. Our Peer Leader Scholars have started a campaign, Why I Vote campaign, hashtag Why I Vote. So if you haven't seen it, visit the Student Life page on Tallahassee Community College website and upload a video explaining why you vote and the importance of voting. So once again, thank you all for joining us this afternoon for day 2 of our civic education series. Next week, we'll kick it off with the federal government and the branches of the federal government. So see you then. You all stay safe and take care.